for a better showing here in Austria, at least. And it looks like, has everybody now... Oh, look. We were looking at it maybe before people had set their strategies up, because basically everybody on the grid now is opting for hard tires. So you would think they're going to try and take the hards into the start of the rain, and then things might get really spicy. Turn 1 can sometimes... Oh my goodness, 5 red lights and we're off. I didn't even notice. Turn 1 should be a little bit stress-free by comparison to turn 3. It looks like everybody's made out alive, but there is a Williams drifting out wide on the exit of turn 1 as all the cars make their way down the main straight. We were on board, or riding along I should say, following 10 Kart there, as he hits his teammate, I think. Or was it Razor who clipped 10 Kart behind? Hopefully he's not ended up with any wing damage there. Still, everybody alive as they bring it now around turn 4. Couple of lockups with lots of cars very, very close together. We'll now catch up with the leaders and see exactly what's happening here, because 10 Kart lost a lot of positions off the start. Lofty Pickle is around about half a second up on his nearest rival currently, Baja, in the Kick Sauber. And we'll be hoping to try and make an advantage count here. But big train of cars coming out of the first lap. Everybody survives. Lap 1 of the Austrian Grand Prix. And we probably have some racing to keep up with. Let's have a look at this. I mean, we can have a look at the tyres, but it's not going to really... I don't think it's going to matter too much, because I think everybody is just on the hard tyres until it rains. Lofty Pickle, though, building up an even clearer advantage there. Look at that. He's already nearly a second out ahead of Baja, so really putting in a commanding performance at the front of the pack so far, Lofty Pickle. And if you can get out of DRS range of the drivers behind, you would imagine there'll be lots of battling happening throughout the rest of the pack, and he may have chance to build up a serious advantage there. I'm sorry that I missed the start of the race. It seemed to happen really quick, and I'm not sure exactly what happened to 10 Kart, but he'll be disappointed qualifying on pole position and watching Lofty Pickle now extend his lead on Baja in P2 to over a second. Tyres will be interesting a little bit, but like I say, at the minute, everybody's on the hards. They're all 2 laps old, and it's going to rain at some point during the race. So the tyres will probably be interesting later, as opposed to right now. Let's ride on board with Sean in the Aston Martin. He was my driver of the day, actually, last time out at Bahrain. Started P5 on the grid. Finished the race in P2. A really good, just solid performance from Sean last time, and finds himself in a podium position currently, well within DRS range of Baja, but will be a little bit nervous, as will the rest of the drivers, about the advantage that Lofty Pickle is gaining out in front. Probably won't want to challenge the Sauber in front of him too much. They need to try and work together and try and keep that McLaren in view. Yeah, lockups into turn 1. No time penalties as yet, though, and it can be a little bit of a penalty-ridden track. Austria, as we ride on board with 10 Kart. Do we think he has any damage? Looks like that front wing is pretty intact to me. So I think it was, once again, maybe just a poor start off the line for 10 Kart. Hopefully it doesn't become a feature of his season, especially not when he's qualifying as well as he is. But he's still well within range of challenging, you know, the drivers in front. Nobody apart from Lofty Pickle has a huge advantage, really, on the cars behind currently. You're just here for the voice? I'm just here for the people, Bill. You know what I'm saying? Glad to hear it. It's good to have you with us. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if I'm any good at any of this stuff, but we needed a commentator for Tier 2. You know, lots of these people are dedicating their evening to having some fun with people racing online. So why don't I do a stint for an hour and a bit, you know, and describe cars going around a racetrack fast. You know what I'm saying? That pickle is high, the pickle is lofty. You're absolutely right about that, and looks to be extending his lead at the front. It is now a 1.4 second advantage for Lofty Pickle in P1 from Sean now, by the way, in P2. I missed the overtake there. Too much playing to the crowd, too much playing to the peanut gallery. I'm not actually watching what's happening during the race as Sean clips that inside curb, and it is a dangerous inside curb on that long left-hander here at Austria. I think he probably felt the car wobble ever so slightly as he touched it, but manages to hold everything together. And looks to be making a bit of a charge here to catch up to the McLaren of Lofty Pickle in front. Hopefully, Sean can do a little bit better than Baha in terms of closing that McLaren down. Do these cars only turn left? No, they only turn right because it's the Red Bull ring. But good question. Good question, well made. And we have our first... Oh, it's not our first penalty. I think it's our second penalty of today's session. It is R7 in the less successful McLaren, let's say, of today's race. Down in P19, gets a 3-second time penalty. Agbala Jobs, unfortunately, in the Red Bull also gets a time penalty. And look at this. All kinds of goings-on are happening going into Turn 4. Arbon gets the move done on Sean. And I think it was Baha in the Sauber was looking around the outside, but ends up losing a place to LTK behind. They're losing a lot of time, though. It's now nearly a 2-second advantage for Lofty Pickle out in front, P1, and really taking charge, commanding this race right now. There are some gaps starting to form. We can also see that the gap from Igor to Razor, P8 to P9, the Ferrari to the Haas, is now over a second. And further down, 10th, who is currently side by side, but then does slot in just behind Skullkiller in the Haas going into Turn 1. 10th is currently about a couple of seconds up on the V-carb of Shelby down in P16. So we were in a train for a long time. The train has broken up a little bit, and people will definitely be trying to make some moves. Arbon, nice driving. Funny you should say that. Arbon currently finding himself in P4, but right up behind LTK, who has made the move on him. And still well within touching distance of Sean out there in P2 as well, but it's now over 2 seconds, the lead for Lofty Pickle. Rain is on the way. And rain is exciting. I don't know exactly when. The drivers will have a better idea than me, because they have, you know, multi-million-pound forecasting software, and I don't understand how to use the spectator menu in F124, the video game. So they'll know. I don't know. But the rain will keep the race interesting. You better believe it. 10 kart. Let's see if he can make a move here. He's got Arbon and LTK in front, looking around the outside there of Turn 3, and does manage to find the traction. Little bit of a wobble. He's still got LTK by the side of him. He's going to get held up a little bit by Arbon in front. They are 3 wide going into Turn 4. And 10 kart just has nowhere to go, but... whew. Careful driving from all involved, because that was pretty scary for a moment. But everybody makes it out alive, and 10 kart doesn't want to get any wing damage going into the back of Sean. I was saying it was Arbon, wasn't I? And it's not, it's Sean. Forgive me, Sean. Who was going a little bit slow, it's fair to say, around the long right-hander. Yeah, that was pretty exciting. Things are exciting. But not for our race leader, Lofty Pickle, who's currently enjoying a very peaceful time out in P1, 3 seconds ahead of the rest of the pack. Going into Turn 3 then, we'll try and, you know what, we can ride on board. Look at that, the 2 Saubers going side by side. into turn 3, and it is Mel who comes out the stronger. But we'll try and ride on board with some of these guys who are battling away for those podium positions. We see lots of lockups, of course, happening, but they probably won't care too much about the life of the tyres, depending on when that rain is due to show up. That is another 3-second time penalty for R7. Not a race to remember for the McLaren driver, while his teammate is 3 seconds out in front. He's now got 6 seconds of time penalties to deal with by the end of the race. These drivers then now starting their 10th lap around the Red Bull Ring. It is a reasonably long one here in terms of laps. It's 36 laps they'll be completing for the Grand Prix. But the laps themselves are not much longer than a minute, which is incredibly quick for F1. So, fast, high-octane action. Thanks for the hydrate, though. Riding on board with Arbon, we can see all of the chaos happening in front. Tenkart looks to make a move up the inside of Sean, but can't quite find the traction. And Sean just gets the power down, taking that outside line. Arbon just giving a little love tap to Tenkart in front, who's done well, really, to recover from being in, I think it was maybe P8 at one point after a pretty awful start. You like a quick minute lapper? Yeah, these laps are fast. They come at you thick and fast. But you have to be incredibly consistent also to achieve at Austria. And we have a 3-second time penalty for Max down in P17. So there are some penalties starting to afflict some of the drivers down the back of the field, which makes sense. They're probably trying to pull out all the stops to make things happen. All kinds of weaving is happening. Sean goes for a move around the outside of LTK, looking to make P2 his, and he will find the traction, but Tenkart, having to avoid some of the cars in front, now has Arbon on his inside going into turn 4. They are 2 by 2. LTK has the inside line on Sean. Arbon has the inside line on Tenkart. Arbon taking himself up into P3, gets the move done on Sean as well, and we're now side by side with the Ferrari and the Aston Martin going into the sweeping left-hander. They will still be side by side, and thankfully Sean does take a moment to collect his thoughts and backs out slightly before we end up with lots of chaos here at the Red Bull Ring. Very exciting racing happening for all of these positions, really, between, you'd say, like P2 all the way down to P6 right now is still a little bit up in the air in terms of, you know, who's really going to come out on top. Samurai's still there, and he's got the DRS on Mel in the kick Sauber up in front. So hopefully, if Samurai doesn't get pressured too much by the cars behind, he can make this an even bigger battle with some of the drivers behind. But he does get taken up the inside there by Golden Egg Fryer in that Aston Martin, who will now look to make chase to the cars in front. We can't take our eyes off this one, though. There is all kinds of goings on in the fight for P2. Cars very close together, although a little bit of a gap has started to form to Sean here in P5. He'll look to be getting a bit of a move on. Not under too much pressure from Mel in the kick Sauber behind. It'd be nice when it moistens up how much harder or possibly sloppy the coming comes. That's right, thank you, Bill. Perhaps I shouldn't read the chat, you know? Got a job to do. I'm gonna get fired. Let's have a look down, a bit further down the grid then. I just feel like I'm going to miss something really exciting happening in the race for P2. But there are exciting things happening all throughout the, all throughout pack, really. As we look at 10th here, approaching the kick Sauber, but no, way too far back to make any kind of a move happen. All of these chasing cars are really just trying to make this pack, this chasing pack behind the McLaren as large as possible. Lofty Pickle does now have a 4.5 second lead to his nearest competitor, which is Arbon in P2. Definitely a bit of a gap to Shelby in the V-carb. We should have a look at that. how are the penalties? A 3-second time penalty currently for Shelby, and a 1.5 down on Bruce Wayne in P12. So that's not really what you want to see. I think based on the fact that the tyres are not going to be very interesting so far, we can actually keep the penalties on screen, because that's probably interesting information at the moment. 10 Kart then gets the run on Arbon, going up into turn 3. I'm not really sure what happened to Arbon there. Was it a poor exit on turn 1? Is he DRS swapping with 10 Kart to try and make gains on Lofty Pickle out in front? Not really sure, but 10 Kart does cement P2, and Arbon will stay behind as they go into turn 4. So not the kind of intense battling that we were seeing a moment ago. Sean's keeping with them. Mel has made some gains on Sean over the past few laps and is definitely in that fight now. Golden Egg Fryer and Gold Samurai are also knocking around. General Jake looks very close to Gold Samurai here as they approach the main straight. Big wobble for the Red Bull in front. And nice and smooth for the V-Carb behind. Plenty of ERS to burn for General Jake as he will throw the car around turn 1, down into 4th gear. Loses traction a little bit though, and doesn't get as good an exit as Gold Samurai going into this next straight, and won't really be in range to make a move happen going into turn 3. But you know who was in range to make a move happen going into turn 3? It's Arbon, who's ahead well before the apex and retakes P2 from 10 Kart. In the midst of all that though, they have made around about half a second gain on Lofty Pickle in front. If the drivers can work together, they can gain on the McLaren in front. But who really wants to work with the guys around them when they're the ones who are taking your championship points away? So we'll see if they can maintain it. LTK is hanging on and hanging on, by the way. Oh, Baja! That is unfortunate. Ends up with a 3-second time penalty. Razor is now on 9. Is that 9 seconds? No, it's 3 seconds for Razor, excuse me. So some time penalties are coming into play. It's going to be a bit of a pain for Baja, who up until then seemed like he was having a pretty decent race, but that 3 seconds is now going to throw things off slightly. 10 Kart makes the move on Arbon. I feel like they might be doing a little bit of swapping positions here to see what kind of a gain they can make on Lofty Pickle out in front of this race, because it doesn't look like too much jostling for position is going on. And as I say that, Arbon very nearly gets a huge snap of oversteer, but does manage to save the car and won't really be within range to challenge 10 Kart in P2, you would think, for a little while now. But at least he hasn't spun out and ended up all the way down in P10 or something. We'll ride on board with Sean, who looks very close to LTK as we get another 3-second time penalty there for Shelby. That is now 6 seconds for the V-Carb driver. And an unfortunate first half of the race here at the Red Bull Ring for him. Looking at 10 Kart and Arbon, it does look like they're quite comfortable swapping positions in front. LTK almost ends up flying into the back of the Ferrari whilst they're trying to make those tactics work. They are making gains on Lofty Pickle in front. This is a reasonable strategy that they're employing currently, swapping the DRS, making sure they've got the battery charged, putting in as fast lap times as possible. They're gonna need to do that to keep tabs on the McLaren, who seems to have all the pace in all the world. I feel bad in a way for Lofty Pickle, because he's been running a great race out here in P1, and I really haven't been following any of it because there's really been no drama. Slightly less sunny, isn't it, than when we first started the Austrian Grand Prix now. Slightly less sunny. Just wondering when the rain is going to feature and what kind of an impact it will have on the race. That was very wide, I think, on turn 1 there for LTK. And Sean will make the move on the inside of the main straight. It looks like Tenkart and Arbon are actually going side by side into turn 3. That's not exactly what they want to be doing, I don't think. Arbon also is looking at about 10% ERS there on the straight at one point. Less than that. Another 3-second time penalty for R7. Going to be tricky to make his way into the points, which is, of course, top 15 for Broke Boys. Currently sitting in P18 with a 9-second penalty now. Gold Samurai, Golden Egg Fryer, still keeping up with this chasing pack, but not really making too many moves, and LTK loses it on the final corner. Disaster for the Alpine. Alpine had such a strong showing in Bahrain, and it looks like we'll try and get a good look at this, but he's probably missing a fair old bit of that front wing. It looks like he's lost both end plates there in that accident. Ends up with a 3-second time penalty from the FIA, which is absolutely outrageous, but he just can't keep the car in a stable position as he's rounding the corners, and he will need to get that wing changed ASAP, LTK, but we'll be aware that the rain is on the way, so the first big incident that really changes the shape of the race, that has worked out really well for the likes of Mel in the Sauber, Egg Fryer in the Aston Martin, Samurai in the Red Bull, and indeed General Jake in the V-Carb, all benefiting. I don't know if it was a spin from LTK, I don't know if it was contact. My fault, I should be watching more, shouldn't I? All will be revealed come the end of the race, I'm sure. LTK, let's have a look. I think did not pit. Oh, is pitting. Now, this will be interesting. I don't think LTK's got much of a say in what happens during the rest of this race now in terms of winners and real movers and shakers. But does fit the medium tyres, which should probably be a bit of an indication that rain might be a bit further away than we first thought. Oh, he's retired in the pit lane. That's what's happened there. I'm talking away, and LTK has retired in the pit lane after having the wing change. So, bit of a disaster there for LTK. I'm not really sure what's happened, but it'll all shake down in the Discord later on, I am sure. For now, let's ride on board with Egg Fryer for a little while in the Aston Martin. Strong showing here from Aston Martin. They have Sean currently in P4. Solid race from him so far. And Egg Fryer in P6. Probably the best performing team, we would say. Best performing constructor so far in the Austrian Grand Prix. It's definitely getting a little bit more overcast out there. Agbalo Jobs lands another 3-second time penalty, which is 6 seconds, and we just caught Egg Fryer cutting the inside of turn 3 there, and that was his third warning, and it is a 3-second time penalty for Egg Fryer in the Aston now. And 3 seconds is a lot at Austria, because these drivers will probably stay pretty close together throughout most of the race. So disappointing there for Egg Fryer. He might say, you know, there was a little bit of slipping and sliding happening in front, and maybe that's why. Penalties can be removed. So sometimes you take the penalties you can see on screen with a little bit of a pinch of salt, and certainly the drivers who have their time penalties are still very much entitled to fight for position out on track. Lofty Pickle hasn't been able to get back up to that 4-second gap to the chasers. Arbon will make it around Tenkart with not too much resistance at all, to be honest. Looks like we have, you know, an interesting top 5. Now, will Gold Samurai be able to get some kind of a move done on Egg Fryer in front, who now does have that time penalty. You would think that Samurai will be looking to make that happen, but hasn't really looked for the majority of this race. Like he's got the pace to really do that. And we're going to watch 10th Cannon and Baja go side by side into the sweeping left-hander and into another left-hander. And, well, Baja fairly, I think, does get the door closed on 10th there. 10th, maybe she's going to have a look down the inside of the final corner. No, she won't, because she's actually bringing the car into the pits, and there are raindrops starting to appear on the screen. So first pit stop of the race, I believe. Let's go to tyres now and see what's happening. First pit stop of the race, it is 10th Cannon in the Mercedes. A little bit earlier than some of the other drivers have gone for this, but Will setting the intermediate tyres here on lap 23 proves to be a benefit to her by the end of this race. It doesn't look like the track is very greasy at the moment, and these tyres might end up burning out a fair bit. But some of the other guys seem to be having a problem keeping the car going in a straight line, including Arbon, currently in P2. 4.5 seconds down now on Lofty Pickle out in front, and the track definitely seems like it's not easy to drive. The hard tyres are all 22 laps old. Arbon will be bringing himself into the pits. He's got Lofty Pickle in front of him in the pits. 10 Kart follows him. Sean opts to stay out, which is interesting. So now all kinds of things are happening. Lofty Pickle was out in the lead of the race, does fit the intermediate tyres. Everybody has to make a pit stop, of course, as per the rules. And all of the drivers in front, Sean, Mel, Samurai, and General Jake, will also be making pit stops to fit those inters at some stage, probably on the next lap, or maybe even the one after if they're feeling really, really brave. But the way that the time differences play out will be interesting to see. Race Control have now disabled the DRS, so Race Control determining that conditions are now poor enough to disable the drag reduction system, which is usually a pretty good indicator that it's time to get some intermediate tyres on. Will the drivers in front take note of that? I think they have to, honestly, at this point. Pickle is only 8 seconds behind Gold Samurai there in P4. They did a good job with the rain. Graphics look very good. Oh yeah, it looks great. Yeah, it looks like everybody is on the way into the pits. There will only be one runner still on hard tyres. It's Skull Killer. And by the end of this lap, I can guarantee that Skull Killer will have the inters fitted. I think he might be in AI mode there. Maybe all kinds of terrible things are happening. So, how's the gap? Well, Arbon has a 5-second gap to Lofty Pickle currently in P1. That is probably just going to be too much of a difference to make up. Also running with very little ERS there. And you can see Pickle out in front still has around about 70% battery to burn. So the cars behind are really trying to throw their entire engine at chasing down the leaders, the leader, I should say, of the race. And Pickle feeling pretty comfortable out in front. Gaps are now starting to form, as we assumed would be the case with pit stops happening. 10 Kart no longer within a second of Arbon. No DRS available, of course, anymore, though. Probably up until the end of this race now. You would think that these intermediate tyres will last everybody to the end. 10th Cannon, maybe it was a wise decision to pit a couple of laps earlier than everybody else, because I think she's made up a couple of places there, and is currently sitting in P8. And I don't really think the tyre wear, in terms of 2 laps extras on the inters with like 10 laps of the race to go, is really going to factor or matter that much. So maybe a strong strategy call from 10. You see that Egg Fryer is reasonably far behind 10 Kart. This is where we're really going to see some separation between the drivers, and also has that 3-second time penalty. So really, currently running, well, P5, Egg Fryer. Aston Martin's still, you know, doing a solid job of being the best performing team at Austria. Don't think we're going to see much change happening out in the front for a while now. So we're going to ride on board with Mel for a little while. who has General Jake just in front and 10th for company just behind. And slightly further back than that, with a 3-second time penalty, is Gold Samurai. But as we say, time penalties can be giveth and they can be taketh away. We might see some exciting racing here as 10th really throws the car, even in these treacherous conditions, into that long left-hander. A bit of a wobble, but it's a great hold, and she's got some decent traction coming out of the corner there, but it's not quite as good as Mel in the Sauber in front, who plays it nice and clean into the final 2 corners. There will be a bit of a race on here, though. Basically for P6, it looks like, at the moment. General Jake, of course, will want to be gaining, and that's disaster for 10th. It is a bit of a drift wide on turn 1. Conditions are worsening, and that is a 3-second time penalty for the Mercedes driver. Without cancelling any of those time penalties, that puts her out of the running a little bit, you would think. Cars are sliding all over the place. Mel does well to hold it all together and is still reasonably close, certainly close enough to attack General Jake, who, by the way, is doing incredible things in the V-Carb. General Jake was way far down the back, wasn't he? Maybe I'm overstating that, but I feel like he was in the bottom 10 for long parts of this race. Maybe that's incorrect. I don't think qualifying was too great, but currently he's finding himself in P6 and is not under too much threat from the cars behind with their time penalties, but is under a little bit of a threat from Mel here. Mel burning the battery. Down into single digits charge. Will look to make the move stick around the outside of turn 3. And there we go. Gets the move done. The V-Carb of General Jake disappearing into the mirrors. Hold it together going into turn 4. And yeah, just about. Cars are wobbling all over the place. We saw a bit of a wobble for 10th there as she's approaching the back of Gold Samurai behind. Mel is actually doing a reasonable job of gaining on the 2 Astons in front. Golden Eggfryer will probably be panicking here because I think Golden Eggfryer has lost a couple of positions now thanks to that time penalty and the cars behind having made inroads. Seems like... Oh, Sean ends up with a 3-second time penalty out there in P4. That's really going to change how things are shaping up come the end of the race. We've got to turn... We don't need to see tyres anymore now. We need to see how these time penalties are going to be affecting the finishing positions of the race, because we have Sean in P4 but with 3 seconds. We have Eggfryer in P5 but with 3 seconds. Doesn't look like the top 3 are interested in changing their positions too much. So Tenkart, bit of a good recovery after qualifying on pole, having a bit of a disastrous first lap, and now probably will earn himself a podium finish by the end of this race if he can keep it all together. But down here is where the real excitement is happening. Eggfryer seems to be really struggling there around turn 4, and Mel looks ready to pounce at any moment on the Aston Martin, which is going very, very sideways. General Jake, though, look at this. Maybe thought about a move there on the kick Sauber, got incredibly close. The Sauber really being held up here, I think, by Eggfryer in front, who is struggling with the conditions. Bit of a slide round the final corner, but it's not going to matter too much. Cars behind, lots of traffic happening. Yeah, it does seem like Eggfryer is going very slow here. And to be honest, it might be a bit of a case of Eggfryer trying to create that 3-second time gap for his teammate Sean in front, because Sean, of course, also has the 3-second penalty. And General Jake, by the way, makes a move around the outside of turn 3 on Gold Samurai in the Red Bull. Great stuff from the V-Carb driver. Gets himself up into P7. Doesn't matter because of the time penalties, but it matters. Track position is always important, and he will be thinking now, Jake, that he can make this move on Mel, who is really getting held up by that slow Aston Martin in front. Little bit of a wobble again there by the Kick Sauber, as he's having to go very, very slowly into the sort of right-hand kink at the start of Sector 3. And into the final corner. Almost an invalidation, you would think there. Oh, not an invalidation, but perhaps a warning. Mel, although maybe just about managed to keep it between the white lines. Now, going into this main straight, is the Sauber going to make any kind of a move on the Aston in front? Doesn't really get as good of an exit as Eggfryer. And Eggfryer now has a 3-second gap to his teammate in front, which basically will guarantee a great finish for Sean if this keeps up. And the Red Bull makes a move up the inside of General Jake. Jake and Samurai still battling away. This will probably frustrate Jake a little bit because he'll know that the Red Bull has that time penalty behind him and really just wants to try and get a move done on the Sauber. Igor, by the way, who I think ran a great race last time out at Bahrain, currently suffering with a 3-second time penalty and P15 in the Haas. Not the best. We'll ride on board for a second with 10th, who is very close to Golden Samurai in front. Lots of cars very close together in this battle for... I mean, there's so many time penalties and things happening, I can't even work out what order any of these cars are actually in at the moment. It's mostly the way it says it on screen, isn't it, you idiot? But Eggfryer is going to be dropping back into this pack. Eggfryer is going to be behind General Jake as things currently stand for sure. And Bruce Wayne's probably going to come into play because he does not have a time penalty, currently sitting in P11 in the Williams. Great move up the inside again by the Red Bull. Little bit of wheel banging, little bit of contact, and Samurai does cede the position to General Jake in the V-Carb. Eggfryer has lost that place to Mel. Mel now will want to be getting the skates on and making chase on Sean in front to see if he can get back within that 3-second gap to make the time penalty come into play. The Aston Martin of Eggfryer, though, is definitely struggling in these wet conditions, and we'll probably see General Jake in the V-Carb look to make a move here. So we'll ride on board for a moment as they approach the start-finish line, ready to begin lap 33 of 36 around the Red Bull Ring. Not long to go in round 2 of Tier 2 of Season 12 of F1 Broke Boys. And a move up the inside again by Samurai. Jake and Samurai really just trading places every lap, but Samurai can't quite find the traction and can't make the move stick. That's going to slow Jake down in his chase on the Aston in front, and a big slide there for Jake. We see the Red Bull having to go very close to that inside line and might end up losing a position to 10th, but no, 10th will slot in just behind the Red Bull as we see everybody struggling and fighting with the car to keep it between the white lines. And huge moment in front. Arbon gets a 3-second time penalty for 3 warnings. There are 3 laps left to go in the race, and 10 Kart is less than a second and a half behind. So as things stand, pole sitter 10 Kart in the Ferrari, who had an awful lap 1, he'll admit that himself, is currently finishing P2 because of the time penalty for Arbon. So the goal for 10 Kart now for the rest of this race is keep it between the white lines for 3 laps, and you've earned yourself a 2nd place finish, which will feel disappointing after sitting on pole, but in the end, is probably a pretty decent result. Eggfryer lost a lot of time just recently to Mel out in front, who is trying to chase down Sean and make that 3-second time penalty count. Eggfryer now 2 seconds behind the Sauber in front. General Jake is now under pressure from Baha in the Sauber, who has got the move done on Gold Samurai and is currently on track, sitting in P8. But time penalties are real. They are a thing. General Jake, we can see very close to this slow Aston Martin. I would assume that it's just Eggfryer struggling with the treacherous conditions out there. 2 laps to go then. They are approaching the start of lap 35. Lofty Pickle 10 seconds out in the lead. I also need to start thinking about who my driver of the day is, and weirdly, even though I haven't really focused on him much at all, it might well be Lofty Pickle, because it's been pretty flawless, and I don't know if anybody else has really done enough to warrant such great praise. Although I seem to remember General Jake being pretty far back earlier on, and still having 0 time penalties to his name, and been fighting with the Red Bull for basically every single lap of the past 10, has managed to keep himself in a pretty respectable position and will end up finishing above Eggfryer for sure anyway. Lofty Pickle then begins the final lap of the Austrian Grand Prix. 11 seconds the lead out in front, and there's absolutely no chance that Lofty Pickle ends up with anything other than a race win here, you would think. Arbon, 3-second time penalty and less than a second gap to 10 kart behind. So you should be looking at a podium of Lofty Pickle on top with 10 kart in P2 and Arbon finishing this race in P3 after a really strong showing, but that's what time penalties can do to you. Mel looking to see if he can close 6 tenths on the final lap to Sean in front. I think it's incredibly unlikely. It looks like Sean will have cemented P4 thanks to the tactics of his teammate Eggfryer down in P6, and General Jake, we missed it, but fighting with the Red Bull down the straight after turn 1, going up into turn 3, ends up with a 3-second time penalty. Jake is now in P8 on track and will be finishing, well, maybe 1 position back from that, because Bruce Wayne, meanwhile, as all the drivers around him are getting all sorts of time penalties, doesn't have one himself and is probably going to gain 4 or 5 positions come the end of the race. Incredible stuff. Lofty Pickle then does win the Austrian Grand Prix, and I apologise to Pickle because I didn't catch it happening, but there's too much excitement happening down the rest of the pack. Arbon on track will finish P2, but 10 kart will take the P2 position from him thanks to that time penalty. HFC Sean finishes P4, and Mel, not able to close the 3-second gap, finishes P5. Eggfryer manages to hold on somehow to P6 despite the assault of the cars behind. Baha well, I was going to say P7, but there you go. What a race from Bruce Wayne. 0 time penalties and manages to get himself up into P6 by the end of the race. A great race from the Williams driver. All you have to do is end the race with no time penalties, and you make a load of points come the end. It's really, it's a simple game. So Bruce Wayne slots in at P6. Who does the game think the driver of the day is? Does it tell me that? I think it's probably just Pickle. 10th in the McLaren. All right, well. Oh, I see. That's just... Really? Well. Not sure I would give it to 10th, to be honest. But the game's entitled to make that call if it so chooses. I think my driver of the day today might well be Lofty Pickle, who, again, I feel like I've done a disservice to because I haven't watched any of his incredibly dominant performance out in front. But Lofty Pickle will stand atop the podium with 10 kart by his side and a very disappointed Arbon, you would say, in P3 following that late 3-second time penalty. Great stuff for McLaren, though. 2 races, 2 wins for Lofty Pickle, setting down a marker in the first 2 rounds of Season 12 of Broke Boys with a commanding lead out in front. That was a very exciting race. I'm glad it rained. Because it kept things very exciting right the way through to the end. While all that's shaking down, let's try and I'll catch up a little bit with some of the stuff happening in the Discord. LTK says he loves this wheel. He used a sarcastic expletive in that sentence, so I think probably does not love the wheel. 2 horrendous starts for 10 Kart. Owning up to that one, and I think that's entirely true, but can't be disappointed with a P2 finish by the end. Seems like Razor and Baja, is it Baja? We're maybe having a bit of a coming together, a little bit of a problem out on track. Overall, doesn't look like anybody's aggrieved enough to be raising big problems come the end of that race. That was round 2 of Tier 2 of F1 Broke Boys, the Austrian Grand Prix. Lofty Pickle leads 10 Kart, leads Arbon. And just before I go, I can have a look at what we think that might do to the standings. Currently, of course, Pickle is out in front and will extend his lead at the top. Sean actually finished second last time and will probably get caught by Arbon. 10 Kart ended up with 0 points after Bahrain with a disastrous start there. So I think is it 18 points, something like that for P2. He'll be getting a lot of points on the board and will be shooting up the drivers' standings. Gold Samurai and General Jake had a good start to the season at Bahrain and had probably an average second race of the season, it's fair to say, here in Austria. Batman, though, well, Bruce Wayne, never seen him in the same room together, will be feeling pretty good. We're sitting currently in 10th position in the driver's standings with 6 points. And ended up gaining ground on a lot of his rivals in front just by way of keeping it between the white lines. It's been an exciting second race of the season. Thanks everybody for chilling out and joining me. Sometimes they do little interviews and stuff with the drivers post-race, but I think they often do that like via Xbox parties and the like. I'm not sure there's an easy way for me to get a hold of all that. But thanks for chilling out. I'll probably be commentating on Tier 2 for the rest of the season, which will mean these Wednesday evening streams. So hopefully I will see you next time. And next time, by the way, I'll be live, as always, around about 8 PM for the start of qualifying for the Qatari Grand Prix, which will be next week. Not much chance of rain there, but a chance of an exciting race all the same. Good night, everybody. Thanks for chilling out. I hope you enjoyed the race. And we look forward to next week when maybe Lofty Pickle can extend his lead